taking off or if you're climbing or if you're in cruise, right? If you're monitoring those screens and you're continuously monitoring those screens, the human factors are going to kick in. You're going to have an issue with your eyes, an issue with fatigue, an issue with memory or whatever. Like any phase of flight that you're in, whether it's the first leg or the second leg of a trip or a day or whatever it is, like those things are going to greatly affect your ability to function properly in the cockpit for sure.
So, like, in there, I think maybe some people may even forget. I'm sure, you don't because you're into it. But like, we have checklists we have to run, like all the time. So, like when we're taxiing, we have a tax checklist before takeoff. While we're technically still taxiing, we have a before takeoff checklist that we are running every item, and they don't take a lot of time. And we've gone to great lengths, myself and the fleet lead, the check airman in the fleet, to pare that down and to boil that down because these errors do creep in. The time it takes for anybody to be heads down allows more errors and other external factors to play a part in losing situational awareness or whatever the case may be. And in the same once we're in flight, so like we've taken off now out of so kind of like our call out 400 feet. The pilot monitoring would say 400 feet. The pilot flying would say, okay, flaps up, yaw damper on, after takeoff checklist. And so then I have a flow as pilot monitoring to do, and I have all these items. And then, of course, ATC, there's tower switching over to departure. You're getting communication established with departure and doing what they say, which is often something, which allows you, because the other guy's hand flying. So now you're doing the automation stuff for not automation per se, but you are manipulating the flight guidance panel for them to follow because it controls the command bars on the primary flight display. So with their hand flying, all they're on is thrust levers, yoke, and rudder pedals. That's it. They're not touching anything else. So you as pilot flying or pilot monitoring would be manipulating and basically inputting the controls ATC gave you for them to follow is the bottom line. But in there, I haven't even ran the checklist. I did my flow. I talked to ATC, and at some point, I got to get my checklist done. I never followed up with the checklist. And so, Barb's talking about, how these errors can creep in and how digitization automation plays a part. And like, we haven't even talked about the time it takes, which artificially compresses the timeline to get things done,
Right. So
which
this
obviously
is
weighs on you as a person.
100%. So this is another phenomenon or phenomena. I don't know. I don't even know if it's that, but it's cognitive overload is what it's called, and it's generally regarded to define it as like mental processing demands that are placed on a person during the performance of a task. So, like you said, you're hand flying, you're doing certain things. You have another pilot, let's say, monitoring the automation or whatever it is, and that the workload as it gets and you didn't even run a checklist, right? So the workload refers to all the tasks that you have to do, and then this overload happens when you have more than you're physically or mentally capable of doing, which oftentimes will happen in a GA aircraft because you're not always flying with a first officer or a captain or whatever, right? You might be flying alone, and then you have all of these other elements that you need to run,
Yeah, I
right?
don't know how they do it. I think
Right.
about it, and like we tend to have this stigma against a single pilot citation or a TBM or a Malibu, whatever it is, Cirrus, in a highly complex class Bravo airspace. It's busy. You're in IMC, and you have all of the automation and technology that we have in a transport category airplane, but you're a single pilot now,
Correct.
and it's like,
So,
how do they do it? Like I don't
right.
even know.
There was
Like I don't even
some
know.
there was some insurance video I had to watch. The Kings had it on their FIRC program of a guy flying back from the business owner flying back in his Phenom from the Caribbean, landed in Miami like during a storm. It's obviously trying to like teach you stuff about the, like decision making process, and it was terrifying.
What's
I,
what's a phenom again?
is it Bombardier?
Embraer.
Embraer. It's just a small, sweet, personal.
Like a single pilot jet?
Yeah,
Okay.
Can be. They're all
Yeah.
they're single pilot. But that you can get
Like, it just walked
Yes,
through
yeah.
the loads that guy had on him, and this is obviously acting. I don't know if it was based off a true story or not. And like, you're just like, oh, that's logical how he's like being overwhelmed right now, and
Yeah.
like air traffic control is telling him something. He's hitting a couple buttons on the thing, it's not doing it, so that's taking his attention. But he's still going however many knots into Miami. Like, while he's trying to figure this out, everything is still going forward. It doesn't matter that that task is tripping him up for like a little bit longer than it should have, and now he's just behind and gets a little frazzled, and it's like that's how statistics happen.
Yeah, it's piling up. It's like playing this game of Tetris.
Yeah.
And like you're trying to that row, you have a perfect row of bricks at the bottom, and you're towards the higher levels, right? And it's really speeding up, and you're trying to figure out how to get that one in there, and you're tapping a couple times to get it fit right in that slot, but you already have 3 other pieces on the board coming down. That's exactly the way it feels. And when we see this a lot, and I know we're kind of going out of chronological order now, but that's when we feel it a lot, is when they give you a crossing restriction on descent. People, descent planning is what I see more commonly than not as the issue. They don't know how to descent plan. They don't know how to do math, quick math. And if the FMS, the flight management system, is not pre-programmed for this crossing restriction, which a lot of times we can see it coming because, again, situational awareness. You listen to the person in front of you. You've probably been following them for 300 miles.
Right.
So listen to the person in front of you. See what crossing restriction they get. Constantly going into South Florida, we get in pin cross in pin 290. Well, the chart says 310. If you have that in there, obviously that's 2,000 feet difference. It depends on when they give you, but that could be a very big difference in the vertical speed required to cross it. And if you can't program that quickly or do the quick mental math, okay, I'm at 31. I need to get to 21, and I have 5 miles to do it, which I can't do that math right now anyways either. But that's well, you'd need a lot more than that. That'd be crazy. But
Yeah.
you can't, if you can't do the mental math to make that cross restriction work, that takes you completely out of the role. You're completely saturated. Task saturated is the term that I use.
Right.
You're
That's
completely
exactly what it's called.
task
Yeah.
saturated. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. And now compound that with, let's say, an emergency, right? Where
yeah.
you have extra stress and you're trying to get down really quickly or something like that, right? Humans don't have the capacity to complete all of these things, especially when they're under pressure. You know, the human factor side, like biologically, psychologically, or whatever, you react to things by processing what's going on. So in your example where let's say you're setting the FMS, right, you're understanding that, okay, here's what I'm seeing in the planes in front of me. And then you have to make a decision. Well, am I going to program it now? Am I going to wait? And then you have to process the response of that decision. So am I doing this? Am I not doing this? Or let's say you get something to program in. You're going, okay, now what do I have to do? And then you have to actually act out on it. So in that space of time, yeah, it can happen instantaneously, let's say, within a human brain. But if there are other things going on at the time, that process is going to be interrupted. Your situational awareness is going to be interrupted. You're not going to know where you are. And like I said, compound it with an emergency and you're toast.
Yeah. I guess even simpler than that, than just you working with yourself in a single pilot. Yeah. Am I going to program this now or am I going to wait? And maybe they'll give me what the chart says. In a 2-pilot crew, you're always, hey man, you mind if I put this in now? So you're not even having a talk with yourself anymore. You're having a talk with another person. You may have already had the talk, which maybe takes you a little bit out of the equation. But then you're going to present the same question to another person. It's going to take them out of the equation for a minute. And so who's watching the airplane at this point in time? Well, you're having this conversation where you're both dedicating hard drive or RAM to this one stupid at that point in time article. Now it allows you to be ahead. Here's the justification. You having that conversation now put you both more back in the saddle later on down the road when it is arguably there's more happening. So there is that. There's a win. There's a little bit of a win there to have it. But it's better to do it early than late, yes, but you still have to do it. So if you do it early, still both takes you out. You kind of do lose a little bit. You're both not flying the airplane. But at cruise, I mean, you get desensitized to it. Like I amping up some stuff a little bit right now, but you do get desensitized to all of this. And one of my best analogies is, if you're used to driving your Buick all the time, 35 miles an hour feels fast. If you're riding a crotch rocket every day, 140 miles an hour feels fast. That is the thing. Like, you get desensitized to some of the stimuli. You just by the repetition and the conditioning, you get more in tune with how quickly information comes at you.
Yeah. I think also what you said something very important about effective communication, right? If you have that conversation in your head and you bring it out to someone else, and now you guys are effectively communicating, ideally you're not spending an exorbitant amount of time discussing it, right? Because then who's flying the airplane, right? There's that accident.
Exactly.
I can't remember what airline it was, but they had a landing light that was out, like
I've heard this story.
Eastern
Yeah.
something, and when the gear goes down, the light turns green when it's down and locked, and it turns out it was down and locked, but the little light, the indicator light in the cockpit, was not working, and they didn't know whether or not it was down and locked. And so, like, it was back in the time where there were flight engineers, and all 3 people in the cockpit were focused on this one light. You go down and you check and you look at it, and I think they ended up, they either ran out of gas or it was a CFIT. Like, they fully crashed, and it was because they just spent time focusing on a light that literally was just a light. They were actually down and locked. And so it just goes to show you that the effective communication and making sure that there is somebody always manning the actual flying of the plane is so important.
Yeah, managing the aircraft state, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see these errors creep in. I'm trying to, I have a limited scope in the airplanes I've flown, the airplanes I fly, and the geographical region. So there's some errors, of course, that don't, or threats that don't come in. We're not flying that much in the mountains. We're not going down to Mexico and flying in big mountains with a language barrier. Those things, they just compound, and then you don't have a VNAV, you don't have it set up correctly, and then they give you a clearance, and then you're always racing, and then all of these items you have to do in the same period of time, just because now you have more jobs to do, and it's just crazy how they compound like that. But what I see, the biggest one is that the vertical descent planning, or just descent planning. Is what gets a lot of people. It takes so much of their
mental energy,
whatever, to make that happen. And it's like, dude, you weren't thinking about this 30 miles ago? You weren't thinking about this 100 miles ago? It's simple equation, and now you need to know what altitude you're kind of looking at, and obviously the charts normally give you some guidance as to what an ideal altitude would be. But it still takes time for a new guy to start figuring these things out when you're used to flying around all the time at 3,000 feet. When you're at 30,000 feet, it's a big difference. So I see those things creep in. But, I mean, I guess, okay, I guess, so I kind of jumped to descent stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, think
for
we're
the amount
okay.
of time we spent taxing, I feel like we're at 30,000 feet very quickly.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
It seems to me training seems to be a big thing. The way I see automation is it's supposed to be a help, not a hindrance. And so something that I commonly, and I was trying to, I tried to make this point earlier. I know it didn't land, but if you can fly the automation, you can fly the plane. That is when I get these new guys and they want to hand fly. They've been talking about flying. They just want to fly now.
New people, Lee.
New people. Yeah, I'm sorry. New flying.
Right.
New person.
Get
New
that
persons.
score up, baby.
New
Yeah,
flying. New flying
Get
people.
that DEI up, yeah.
New flying people.
Flying persons,
Yeah.
people.
I think persons. Flying persons.
Yeah, flying persons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Persons.